Hello and welcome to this week's edition of the Glasgow Times Sports podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes. To keep in touch with us, use our social media platforms, Facebook, Instagram and Twitter, which are all at Q and Review. That's CUEANDREVIEW. Or get in touch via information@qandreview.com. That's information@CUEANDREVIEW.com. Please like and share our podcasts and give us any constructive feedback.
Evening Times Sport, April 19. Archie Knox remembers Rangers' trip to Russia in 1996. A quarter of a century ago, Rangers recorded arguably their most impressive European away result. The Light Blues travelled to deepest, darkest Russia to face Alania Vladikavkaz in the second leg of a Champions League qualifier. No one could have predicted what would happen at the Republican Spartak Stadium on the evening of 21st August 1996. 2 weeks earlier, Walter Smith's men came from behind to beat the Russian champions 3-1 in the first leg, with Ali McCoist, Gordon Petrich and Derek McInnes sending Ibrox wild. Alania were a bit of an unknown quantity at the time. They had won their first Russian championship in 1995 and had narrowly been put out of the UEFA Cup by Liverpool that season. Archie Knox was assigned the role of scouting the opposition prior to the clash. He said, "I actually went to Vladikavkaz to watch them in a pre-season tournament. It wasn't far from Chechnya, where all the troubles were. Even though it was a poor place, you want to have seen their training ground. It would have matched some of the big clubs' training grounds now, either down in England, or Celtic or Rangers' training ground. It was of that standard. It was absolutely incredible, and they looked after us well." After travelling across Moscow to catch a domestic flight, Knox found himself confused by the Russian signs and unsure where to go. He says, "So I eventually got a hold of a guy who spoke English. He was a journalist for the New York Times, and he was going to Vladikavkaz, nothing to do with football or anything like that. So he said, 'I'll keep you right.'" Knox climbed onto the plane, still clutching his baggage, before being instructed to throw it into a storage box. He said, "I then tried to get my seat, which I thought was my seat number, and there's someone sitting in it. So I'm saying, oh, for sake, where am I going to sit? I was telling the boy, 'Look, you're in my seat,' and he was having none of it. After finding a spare space where there were 3 seats on either side facing each other, like being on a bus," Knox continued, "so I'm sitting there minding my own business, and this boy comes out with a bottle of brandy. He's toasting people, so he's handed me this brandy in a paper cup. I said, no, it's okay." The boy from the New York Times says, "You'd better look as though you're taking it." So I take the brandy and off we go. It's that bloody tight, and I didn't want to collide my feet with anybody, so I get stiff, and I'm trying to move my feet and I'm thinking, oh, for heaven's sake, I've stood on that guy's foot. So I looked under the table in the middle, and it's a big bloody dog. You couldn't have believed it. On the way back, I'm sitting at the back this time, and they started to put this vapour through the system. You could hardly see, so I'm sitting there, and all of a sudden this big truck arrives at the side of the plane, and they change the 2 wheels at the back. You couldn't make it up. They jack it up and change the two wheels at the back. I was like, what? The plane then starts to taxi, then stops again. The stairs go down again, and I see two guys running across the tarmac with their bags, and they come on the plane. The plane was packed, so they put their bags between their legs, held onto the racks, and they stood the whole way. People might say, you're talking a load of rubbish. But that's exactly what went on. It was scary. Knox arrived at the hotel where he would spend the best part of a week, shared by the Auxerre side, upcoming opponents of Vladi Kavkaz, in which he had nothing to do once his scouting mission for the day was finished. Auxerre had their own private plane. They weren't stopping to pick people up on the way. Rangers set off on their 6,000-mile trip to the Republic of North Ossetia Alania at the foothills of the Caucasus Mountains. Vladikavkaz nestles just a few miles from Georgia in the south and around 90 from then war-torn Chechnya to the east. The trip would provide yet more drama in the air, this time on the Rangers' charter flight over concerns the plane would run out of fuel. Said Knox, "They announced this. We think we'll be okay, but we might have to stop to refuel." Honest to God, when you went to the domestic airport, there were hundreds of planes there, bits hanging off some of them. That was a scary journey, I've got to say. I've had some belters on trips. You were just happy to be on the ground. As always, a number of Rangers supporters made their way over to southern Russia. One was Dougie Dick, then residing in London. He had travelled up and down to Ibrox and far beyond since 1986. Having taken in the first leg, he was not going to miss this. He laughed. It was one of the most memorable away games I've ever had. The home leg was one of the drunkest I've ever been at a game. I was rolling my eyes at one point because I thought I was seeing double. I think it was the next day we had to travel to the Russian embassy in London to get visas. After landing in Moscow, they nervously flew from a domestic airport, aware of the stories of issues with internal Russian flights. Added Dougie, "The only thing missing was sheep and cattle running about. It was just chaos. They made their destination in one piece, though not before issues with loose luggage mid-flight. I remember falling asleep on the flight and then waking up, and we had landed. I tell you now, when Pope John Paul used to kiss the floor when he landed somewhere, he must have flown Aeroflot, because that's what I felt like when we landed." To the game itself, Rangers knew the tie was precarious given the Russians only required a 2-0 win to progress. Fortunately, Knox had done his homework, identifying a switch of play from their left midfielder to their right winger. He says, "So when we played them, we just kept the fullback out on that side. It would have been George Alberts. They were the top team in Russia at that point and had some really top players. We found this way of playing against them that suited us. Building up through our midfield and keeping somebody out on that side of the pitch so the guy couldn't get a chance of getting started." The night before the game, Dougie and his fellow Blue Noses checked into their hotel, alongside Rangers officials and media, culminating in drinks with Knox. He recollects, "We were telling them, don't play one up front with McCoist. It doesn't work. He's not that good. He needs someone to play alongside him." Anyway, the next day we get to the ground. We were a bit nervous because we knew if they won 2-0 we're in trouble. And you know what Rangers are sometimes like in these qualifiers, especially then. We always found a way of snatching defeat from the jaws of victory. Dougie need not have worried, as Ali McCoist nodded home an Alex Cleland cross after 36 seconds and would go on to net an 18-minute hat-trick, his second in as many games after starring in a 5-2 demolition of Dunfermline 4 days earlier. The Rangers' front three of Peter Van Vossen, Brian Laudrup and McCoist tore the Russians apart. Any pre-match nerves Dougie had were obliterated, and he was surprised at how easy it was. He says, "The game was unbelievable. It was like a park game. The Russians were so naive in the way they played, and obviously Ali scores a hat-trick. They should have maybe kept it tight and tried to nick a goal, but they made it an open game of football which suited us. But nobody expected to win 7-2 away." Rangers would finish bottom of the Champions League group containing Ajax, Auxerre and Grasshoppers, with just 1 win and 5 defeats. The less said about that, the better. But as a stand-alone game, the result in Vladikavkaz will forever be remembered fondly. Evening Times Sport, April 19. Hibs sack Maloney after just 4 months. Report by Aidan Smith. Hibernian have confirmed the sacking of manager Sean Maloney after just 4 months in charge. Maloney has departed in the wake of Saturday's Scottish Cup semi-final defeat by Hearts. A club statement read, "Hibernian Football Club can confirm that Sean Maloney has departed the club as first-team manager. Gary Caldwell, Valerio Zudas and Brian Dugan have also left with immediate effect. David Gray will take charge of the first team as caretaker manager for the remainder of the 21-22 campaign and will be supported by Eddie May and John Bush. No further comment will be made at this time." Executive Chairman Ron Gorbin commented, "Our hope in appointing Sean Maloney as a young, highly regarded coach was that he would help us take the club forward, but ultimately it did not work out. We thank Sean and his coaching staff for all their hard work and efforts and wish them all the best for the future." Report by Aidan Smith. Evening Times Sport, April 19. Postecoglou dismisses concerns over Celtic fatigue. Report by Graham McGarry. From the very start, many predicted this season would be an uphill struggle for Celtic. Bedding in a new manager was one thing, but Ange Postecoglou's first remit in the job was to almost completely rebuild the playing squad. That they have overcome most of the challenges laid down to them to be leading the Premiership by 6 points with 5 games to go is worthy of praise, even if it was cold comfort to the Celtic manager in the aftermath of their Scottish Cup semi-final defeat to Rangers. The bigger picture, of course, is that carrot still dangles in front of his team, but while the title is tantalizingly close, Postecoglou is expecting there may be some further rough terrain to navigate on their way to their ultimate goal. His men have proven themselves adept at quickly recovering from setbacks so far this season, though they haven't been forced to absorb a gut punch of the nature of the one they suffered on Sunday thus far. That recovery, too, will be an uphill battle, but one Postecoglou expects his men to rise to. As he explained to his players in the aftermath of the game on Sunday, the road to success is not downhill. He found it a little harder to explain why many of his players appeared to be struggling up a fairly old slope as they strained to match the run of Calvin Bassey that led to the Rangers' winner. Indeed, it seemed that for most of the afternoon, and particularly in extra time, that the Rangers players, who had played 120 minutes against Braga on Thursday evening, albeit against 10 men for the most part and even 9 towards the end, had the greater reserves of energy to draw on. Postecoglou rebutted, "I didn't see it that way. They did press us, but I still thought we had our moments to play through, and we did. In these kind of games, you know you've got to stay strong, get through the sort of sticky patches, and wait for your moments to take advantage. I don't think either side dominated the game. It was pretty even, and it was decided by one moment. That one moment, the Carroll Starfelt own goal, may well have settled the tie in terms of the scoreline, but the Cameron Carter-Vickers miss, when the defender's shot hit the crossbar from close range, with Celtic already a goal to the good, also has a strong claim as the match's sliding doors moment. To focus on either as an explanation for the eventual outcome, though, is a little reductive, and there will be plenty of other aspects of the Celtic performance that Postecoglou will be chewing over in the days that followed. It could be argued that it was the greater impact made by the Rangers' substitutes that ultimately swung the game back in their favour after Greg Taylor had opened the scoring for Celtic. That goal came in Celtic's best spell of the match, with Matt O'Reilly making a positive impact as he managed to free himself from the dual shackles of Calvin Bassey and John Lundstrom that had so limited the contribution of Tom Rogic. For all their much vaunted squad depth, though, there was a seriously patchwork look to the Celtic defence in particular as extra time got underway. Anthony Ralston, who had come on in place of the injured Josip Juranovic, ended up deployed at left back, with young centre-half Stephen Welsh forced to come on as an auxiliary right back following the departure of Taylor. With a clearly ring-rusty James Forrest pressed into action ahead of Welsh on the right flank, and Kyogo too still searching for sharpness up top, Celtic's attacking threat was seriously blunted, and they looked shaky defensively as Rangers penned them in towards the end of extra time. Ultimately they buckled, and in that instant their hopes of a treble were extinguished. That may have been a fanciful hope at the start of the season, and that it was a realistic proposition for so long is to Celtic's credit. But Postecoglou doesn't think the loss of that opportunity will be playing on the minds of the players. He said, "I never thought about trebles or doubles. That's language that's used here. I've never thought about that in my career, and I won't think about it now. Every competition is an opportunity to be successful. For us at the moment, we've won one trophy this year. That's back at Celtic Park. Obviously, our main goal this year was to become champions, and that's still in our hands. We've got 5 games to do that, and that's what we've got to focus on." It can be easy for those not emotionally involved to look at bigger pictures, and the league title chase is, of course, what really matters to Celtic this season. But focusing on the long-term goal does not mean ignoring the short-term pain, even if Postecoglou has vowed not to allow it to derail his team from their ultimate aim. He said, "I think that is selling ourselves short, and our supporters short. Our supporters came to Hampden hoping to see us get to another final. I don't think you can take these opportunities for granted. You don't just assume they're going to come around every year. All of them are hard-earned, and when they come around you want to take them. I don't think we've lost perspective, and I don't think it's a matter of tailoring our language to make sure the players feel good about it. The reality of it is we were in a semi-final on Sunday, a tight game as we knew it would be, and unfortunately we did not progress. That doesn't change anything about next week, whether we win against Rangers or not. The goal is still the same. Report by Graham McGarry. Evening Times Sport, April 20. Hatate admits emotional and physical fatigue is kicking in at Celtic. Report by Aidan Smith. Rio Hatate admits emotional and physical fatigue is kicking in with the games coming thick and fast for Celtic at the business end of the season. The Hoops midfielder has been a hit since arriving in Glasgow in January after joining from Kawasaki Frontale. Early goals in his Celtic career against Hearts and Rangers made an instant impression with the Parkhead faithful, but his performance level has dipped in recent weeks. Hatate admits he is finding the hectic Scottish fixture schedule difficult, but he is hoping to adapt his game to help his side clinch the Premiership crown with 5 games remaining. He told Sportiva, "Since my debut against Hibs, I have felt the intensity of the European game and played a number of games. The fact that I've kept getting appearances shows that the team trusts in me, and that's given me a lot of confidence. But for what feels like the first time, I'm definitely feeling emotional and physical fatigue. It's been 3 months since I arrived in Glasgow, and getting used to a new environment on and off the pitch has been trial and error. In Japan, there were ways I could refresh myself and take a mental break, but that's difficult when you're playing so frequently. There are times when you can't make a run-in on goal or hold back on the attack to preserve the team's balance, and I have to recognise my fatigue. For the national team, I had to go to Australia, then Japan, and back to Scotland. It was my first call-up as an overseas player, and I was confronted with the difficulty of maintaining your condition while travelling, and then immediately having to get results for your team. When you're away from your team on national team duty, there's a chance you can lose your position. My first day back at Celtic, there was a moment that I saw 2 balls and was clearly jet-lagged. But in Europe, you need to be tough enough to stay fit and fight for your position. So to start against Rangers gave me a lot of confidence. It was huge to be able to help create the equaliser. On the match sheet, I didn't score a goal or record an assist, but it was huge that I was able to leave my mark on the team's victory. Dazen Maeda talked about how even though the team has been building on what it has been doing, those of us who joined mid-season have added our own strength and helped push us into first place. I definitely feel tired, but I want to keep doing whatever I can to help the team win the league, and I think I'll become tougher and stronger as a result. Report by Aidan Smith. Evening Times Sport, April 20. Alan Hutton makes Rangers silverware call. Report by Chris Jack. The wins brought memories for all supporters. It is medals that Giovanni Van Bronckhorst needs most of all. Victories over Braga and Celtic were rightly celebrated last week, but each triumph, dramatic and thrilling in its own respective right, will ultimately count for nothing if Rangers don't lift silverware at the end of their Europa League and Scottish Cup campaigns. Such occasions should be savoured by those that earned famous successes, and those that were there to witness such nerve-shredding but joyous fixtures at Ibrox and Hampden, as Van Bronckhorst emerged with huge credit from two potentially defining fixtures. The Dutchman has often cut a reserve figure on the touchline. As Braga were beaten and Celtic conquered, it was clear that what emotions were coursing through the veins of the 47-year-old. A distinguished career at the highest level with Rangers, Arsenal and Barcelona, as well as captain of his country, gives Van Bronckhorst an understanding of what is required as manager of such a club and institution. And former Ibrox defender Alan Hutton knows that the drive to deliver silverware will be as strong as ever as Rangers dare to dream and set their sights on a remarkable cup double during the closing weeks of the campaign. Said Hutton, "I was a young boy when he was at the club, but I know how much it means to him. He played for Rangers and is now the manager, so back-to-back defeats from Celtic, he would not have liked that, and you could see the emotion from him after the game at Hampden last Sunday. You could see what it meant, so he'll want to kick on from here. All of these Rangers players are judged on what you win. You have to win. You have to get silverware. The semi-final was a big statement from them, having gone from extra time against Braga and into extra time against Celtic, so it is up to them to chase Celtic down now. That chase will resume this weekend, when Rangers head to Fir Park and aim to secure the victory over Motherwell that would reduce their deficit in the title race to 3 points. Celtic will, of course, have the chance to restore that advantage at Ross County on Sunday afternoon, and it would be a surprise if Ange Postecoglou's side allow their Hampden heartache to linger. Rangers' title aspirations remain forlorn despite their knockout achievements. All the champions can do is take care of their own business and hope for the best. Said Hutton, the semi-final was an absolutely massive result. The team went into the game under pressure after back-to-back defeats against Celtic, and they needed a big performance. I think they got that, so I am looking forward to the Scottish Cup final, and you never know what can happen in the league. After Sunday's result, there are still 5 games left, and it is up to them to go and put down a marker. Celtic have to go and get it over the line. If they do slip up, and remember, it is games against the other top teams in the league, so there are going to be no easy ones. Rangers are now going to be chasing them all the way. Rangers faced a defining week. There was no getting away from that fact. The European performance and then the game against Celtic. Had they been beaten in both of those games, the season was effectively done. But it is the opposite, and it can kick Rangers on now. Again, they know the league is going to be difficult. There are only 5 games left, and with 6 points as well as the goal difference, it is going to be tough. But I'm sure they will keep going until the end. If Rangers are to keep their faint hopes of title glory alive and realise their ambitions of lifting silverware at home and abroad, they are going to have to do it the hard way this term. The loss of Alfredo Morelos to injury could have been the final nail in their medal targets this term, but Van Bronckhorst's side have adapted and shown their character and quality. Fears over just where the goals to win games and trophies would come from have been allayed so far, and the coming weeks offer a chance for heroes to emerge and legends to be made. Hutton continued, Kemar Roof has had to bide his time behind Alfredo Morelos. He had shown glimpses of what he was capable of, such as when we went on and scored a winner against the likes of Aberdeen. It was difficult for him in the previous Old Firm games because the service to him was not good. He needs bodies around him. I played against him when he was at Leeds, so I've seen him up close and personal, and I know that he is a fantastic footballer. It's been difficult coming up to Rangers and maybe having to play a little bit second fiddle to Morelos, but he's a different profile of a player. He can hold the ball up, he likes 1-2s and getting shots off quickly. Morelos is different. He can occupy two centre-backs. Roof is not going to do that, and you have to play to his strengths. Like you saw last Sunday for Scott Arfield's goal, if you get bodies around Roof in attacking areas, he can help to create. Report by Chris Jack. Evening Times Sport, April 20. Sad day for Hibs, says former manager John Hughes. Report by Ian Collin. John Hughes insists the sacking of Sean Maloney was also a sad day for Hibs and football management. Hughes has been impressed with Maloney and the former Celtic attacker's football philosophy since he took the reins at Easter Road in December. But acknowledging poor results, he has lamented the Hibs board decision to allow the 39-year-old just 4 months in charge before relieving him of his duties. The former Belgian assistant was in charge for just 19 games before losing his job, and Hughes admits he is absolutely gutted for Maloney and his backroom team. But the current Dunfermline boss, who was himself sacked by Hibs after just 16 months, is adamant the decision to axe the Scotland cap does not show his old club or the managerial merry-go-round in a good light. He said, "I am absolutely gutted, I really am, not just for Sean Maloney and his staff, but for Hibs as well. I'm a fully paid-up member of the managers' union, and you don't want to see that. I think Sean's an impressive guy, and sometimes it works for you, and sometimes it doesn't. But it's not just Sean, it's Hibs as well. I just feel sorry for everyone there, because you never want to see that happen to your manager. You always want success. You cannot do anything in 4 months. He's had one transfer window. I was always impressed with Sean and the way he conducted himself, and the way he saw football and how it should be played. It's all right saying that it's doing all your work and getting the time to try to implement it. But 9 times out of 10, football is a results business, and if you're not getting the results, you don't get that time. Unfortunately for Sean, that's been the case. I really feel it's a sad day for the club and for football managers." Meanwhile, former Hibs striker Kevin Harper, who recently took on a scouting role with the club, insists Maloney deserved more time to turn things around and put his own stamp on the team. But despite seeing positives in Saturday's Scottish Cup semi-final defeat to rivals Hearts, the former Albion Rovers boss admits he can see why owner Ron Gordon has made a snap judgment so early in Maloney's reign. He said, "It was a bit of a shock, if I'm honest. I didn't expect that to happen. I thought he would probably get to the end of the season, then reassess it from there. But the owner has decided that after a tough weekend and tough week, that Sean, as he said in his statement, the experiment didn't work. He's got every right to make that decision. When you look at it, 4 months in a job is a real short period of time, and he probably deserved a little bit more time. But I understand where the owner is coming from. We've been beaten from our local rivals and not made the top 6. He's only won 1 game since the turn of the year. So when you put all those factors into place, I think the owner has decided he can't take that anymore and he wants to have a clean break. But it's a real short time. Harper added to Sky Sports, I was at the game on Saturday and I felt in the second half they did very well and there were a lot of positives. It takes time to change and put your methods across. But you also have to remember that football is about winning games. And if you don't win games, then the pressure from the fans and from upstairs comes on top. And it probably didn't help getting beaten by our city rivals in the cup and to put us in the bottom six. Gordon and CEO Ben Kensel make decisions they feel are the best for the club. In the statement Ron put out, he said it was an experiment and the experiment didn't work. By that statement, he's taking responsibility. But he is the owner of the club and he has the right to make those decisions and make those choices. Report by Ian Collin. Evening Times Sport, April 21. Christopher Jack says that Van Bronckhorst has earned the right to rebuild Rangers. It is said that you are never more than a couple of games away from a crisis as Rangers manager. A week ago, Giovanni Van Bronckhorst was on that brink. Today he is as far from the precipice as he has been for some time. That fact owes much to the fickle nature of football and fans, but it was a reality that Van Bronckhorst was facing after a run that had seen questions over his ability and position become increasingly prominent. Those doubts have been parked. The fears have been shelved. It is amazing what a couple of wins can do for the mood of a support and the perception of managers and players. Victories over Braga and Celtic do not completely eradicate the issues, but they have bought the Dutchman time and ensured any discerning voices will be shouted down by a majority still high on the buzz of Europa League progression and an Old Firm win. The collapse in the Premiership title race, one which has seen Rangers squander a lead to sit 6 points behind Celtic, is on Van Bronckhorst's shoulders, and he must carry the can for overseeing the form that leaves the champions in the position of forlorn challengers. When Celtic clinched all 3 points at Ibrox, Van Bronckhorst was staring at the nightmare possibility of 4 successive derby defeats as he looked ahead to the Scottish Cup semi-final and the last league encounter of the season at Parkhead. That reality would have made it almost impossible to defend the 47-year-old, and the case for cutting short his tenure would have grown significantly. Had 4 Old Firms been lost, then the backing of the support surely would have been as well. That is why Sunday was as significant. Van Bronckhorst needed a statement, a win, a victory that showed his tactical astuteness, and a buy-in from his squad when the chips were down and the stakes were high. On a day when Rangers simply had to win, they did just that, and the manner of it, with a performance full of bravery and nous, made it all the more satisfying for Van Bronckhorst. Recent weeks had given his critics a chance to find their voice. As he took the acclaim of the red, white and blue half of Hampden, his name was sung in celebration. There have been moments when Van Bronckhorst has been accused of being too passive, perhaps too nice, as his style on the touchline and in front of the cameras has been analysed and compared to predecessor Steven Gerrard. He is naturally a very different character. It takes a man of a certain stature, temperament and mentality to be Rangers' boss. Such a position demands a leader, a motivator, a figure who thrives under intense pressure and delivers results. When Van Bronckhorst spoke ahead of the first leg in Braga a fortnight ago, he addressed the pressure to land at least one piece of silverware this season, and whether it was laid out as a prerequisite by the Ibrox board during his discussions to replace Gerrard as boss. His time in Glasgow as a player ensured he needed no introduction to the demands and expectations, but understanding them and being able to match and live up to them are very different things. That is why the extreme time wins last week were as meaningful and emotional for Van Bronckhorst. They have bought him time, space, and an opportunity. A week on from Braga, he will surely be breathing a little easier and sleeping a little better as attentions turn to the remaining league fixtures, the Europa League semi-final with RB Leipzig, and a Scottish Cup date with Destiny against Hearts. There will still naturally be sceptics within the support, but there is now little prospect of a premature parting of ways come the end of the season. That will be a relief to Van Bronckhorst, but equally so to the Ibrox board. Concerns over how Rangers are being run at all levels remain valid, and even the ultimate triumph on the continent should not be enough to stop questions over a number of individuals being raised. On and off the park, Rangers are in need of new people, new talents and new ideas. But Chairman Douglas Park and his board no longer need to wrestle with the notion of replacing a manager just months after appointing him, and the considerations, both in football and financial terms, are far removed from where they could have been had the last week panned out differently. Time will tell whether Van Bronckhorst is capable of being a successful Rangers manager. He has, though, now earned the right to give it a proper crack on his own terms as he prepares for a summer of wheeling and dealing to put his stamp on the squad. Rangers' record in the transfer market in recent times has been largely abject, and Van Bronckhorst is destined to fail if the strike rate, either on his terms or the say-so of Ross Wilson, does not dramatically improve during the close season. It must be done Van Bronckhorst's way, and he should be allowed to succeed or fail on his own merits, his own philosophies and signings. He has still to completely convince his manager, but he has earned the right now to be given time to do so. It is imperative that Van Bronckhorst enters his first full term as boss with some silverware, and the ramifications of the final against Hearts cannot be understated. If Rangers end up empty-handed, it will be a case of one step forward and two back for their boss. Van Bronckhorst has pulled himself away from the brink once already, and he can ill afford to find himself in a similarly precarious position any time soon. That moment should not arrive until next season at the earliest. The last week has been the best of Van Bronckhorst's reign. It must be put to good use for the sake of himself and of Rangers, says Christopher Jack. Evening Times Sport, April 21. Olympic medalist Jack Carlin thrilled to be back in Glasgow for Track Nations Cup. Report by Susan Egglestaff. When Jack Carlin returns to his home velodrome in Glasgow today, it will immediately evoke one of his fondest memories of his cycling career to date. 6 years ago, as a fresh-faced teenager, Carlin burst onto the international scene with victory in the team sprint at the Glasgow World Cup, and despite picking up World, Olympic, Commonwealth and European medals since, That first international victory remains one of his sweetest and is a significant part of the reason he is so happy to compete in Glasgow whenever he can. The 24-year-old says, "It's nice to be back on the home boards. The World Cup in Glasgow was my second ever elite competition, and to this day it's probably my favourite cycling memory. So being back, I'm more excited than anything." Paisley-born Carlin honed his craft in Glasgow's Sir Chris Hoy Velodrome, and he is back for the prestigious Track Nations Cup, which takes place over the next 4 days. Carlin, along with his fellow Scots and Olympic medalists Katie Archibald and Nia Evans, will be the stars of the show, and Carlin admits that having done no international racing for 3 months, he can barely wait to pull on his skin suit in anger once again, lining up in the team sprint and individual sprint. He says, "Everyone's looking forward to some good international racing, and I think this is the first time since the Olympics every nation is going to be racing at the same time. I'm not in absolutely top form or at my most fresh, but the team is looking good. We've got a lot of youth in the team and we're in a good place, and this is a good one to get us ticking over for the year. We'll have the crowd behind us too, so it'll be good." Carlin's talent has never been in doubt, having picked up silverware at world, European and Commonwealth level in the past 6 years. However, on his Olympic debut in Tokyo last summer, he proved he was able to perform on the greatest stage of all, returning home with a brace of medals, silver in the team sprint and bronze in the individual sprint. He admits, though, having had such an intense build-up to those games, extended of course by a year due to the pandemic, meant the often experienced anticlimax following the closing ceremony hit him like a ton of bricks. He says, "I'd be lying if I said I didn't have a bit of an Olympic come-down. The Olympics was even more than what I expected, especially with all the uncertainty in the build-up and so afterwards. You do feel, what now? You have to build back into it, and the motivation is starting to come back. I think I'm getting that love for it back." One thing that has helped Carlin's motivation has been his new coaching setup. In Tokyo, Jason Kenny became Britain's most successful Olympian ever, winning his 7th gold medal. In the aftermath, though, he announced his retirement and was unveiled as Great Britain's new sprint coach, meaning Carlin had to adjust to being coached by his former teammate. The transition for both, though, says Carlin, has gone incredibly well, so far at least. He says, "It's been surprisingly very smooth, and so far it's been a very positive experience. Obviously, being a teammate of Jason, I know him well, and he's starting to set down the ground rules for everyone. He's got high standards in terms of what he expects, and so far it's been good. So long may that continue. The group has a very good dynamic, and Jason coming in has just pushed that forward. Jason is still the leader, so he should be considering what he's done in the sport." This week's Track Nations Cup is the start of a busy few months for Carlin, with one of his major targets Birmingham 2022, which is now only 3 months away. The Commonwealth Games are Carlin's sole opportunity to represent Scotland, and, all going to plan, he is likely to be fighting some of his Great Britain teammates for medals in both the individual sprint and the cairn. Having picked up a silver medal in the former 4 years ago, Carlin is in no doubt he will head south with a view to upgrading that this time around. He says, "My expectations are always high. I don't go to any race to make up the numbers. I got silver in Gold Coast with not the best run-in, so this time around I'll be looking to do better. Obviously you want Flower of Scotland playing over any other anthem, but I won't be upset if the other guys are winning medals too." The start lists in Glasgow over the next 4 days boast some of the sport's hottest talent, with many of the world's very best riders on show. Great Britain's Laura Kenny, Joe Truman and Charlie Tanfield will be in action, while from a Scottish point of view, Carlin, Archibald and Evans will be joined by a women's sprint team consisting of Louisa Steele, Iona Moyer and Lauren Bell, with Ali Fielding alongside Carlin in the men's team sprint. Report by Susan Egglestaff. Evening Times Sport, April 21. Celtic pals on hand to help RB Leipzig end Rangers' Europa League dream. Report by Ewan Payton. RB Leipzig will be able to lean on Andreas Hinkel's old Celtic pals to help them end Rangers' Europa League run. The former Hoops right back is assistant manager with the German side, working under manager Domenico Tedesco. The sides will meet in the semi-finals of the UEFA competition in the coming weeks, as they battle it out for a place in the final. And Hinkel has revealed that he has been in touch with the likes of Celtic coach John Kennedy to help with Leipzig's preparations. He told the Scottish Sun, "I have always followed Celtic and Scottish football since I left the club. I have watched the Old Firm games against Rangers over the last few years. I have connections in Scotland, and I am still in touch with people like John Kennedy at Celtic. I will maybe call some people before the first Rangers game to speak about the team. We will analyse all of Rangers' recent games, but it can also help to speak to someone like Kendo. He has been involved against Rangers many times in the last few years and will be an expert on them. Unfortunately, due to our schedule, I will not be able to come and watch Rangers in person before we play, but we will analyse them and we will get our information on them. We have a good analysis department who will watch them, and we will know what to expect." Report by Ewan Payton. Evening Times Sport, April 21. Morton revealed as the Scottish club to vote against VAR introduction. Report by Ewan Payton. The one Scottish club who voted against the introduction of VAR in the Premiership next season has been revealed. The SPFL held a general meeting on Tuesday as all 42 clubs were asked to vote yes or no to the technology coming to Scotland's top flight. The vote was a landslide in favour of VAR, with 41 clubs in favour and just one side against the idea. That club has been revealed as Morton. The Championship side, who are fan-owned, have detailed their reasons for opposing the move. A club statement in the Greenock Telegraph reads, "At Tuesday's SPFL vote, we can confirm that Morton were the club who voted against the introduction of VAR. As a community-owned club, fans are at the foremost of our minds, and it is often felt that VAR has in some ways diminished the experience of watching games where it is used. VAR will only be used in the Premiership next term. It will be implemented halfway through the campaign after the break for the 2022 World Cup. Top-flight clubs will pay £1.2 million a season to utilise the technology. This will operate on a sliding scale from £190,000 for the champions down to £67,000 for the 12th placed club." Report by Ewan Payton. Evening Times Sport, April 21. Kevin Thompson details the reasons behind John Lundstrom's Rangers' rise and rise. Report by Christopher Jack. Kevin Thompson reckons John Lundstrom has shown his character and his quality to become a key component of the Rangers' midfield this term. The Scouser endured a difficult start to life at Ibrox following his summer switch from Sheffield United, and struggled to live up to the hype in his first months north of the border. Lundstrom could have quit Rangers during the January transfer window, but his perseverance has paid off, and he has risen to prominence under the guidance of Giovanni van Bronckhorst. His performance in the Old Firm win at Hampden was one of his finest for the champions, and former Ibrox star Thompson has been impressed with the way he has turned his Rangers career around. Thompson said, "I questioned what he was when he first came to the club. I knew all about him from watching him on the telly with Sheffield United. When he was there, he was getting about in the box, scoring goals, and being a driving force. He came here, and it was a different job, and he has even found himself in a back three at times, like he did against Dortmund. It shows just how adaptable he is, but also it tells you a lot about his character. It's all about the team. He has really found his niche in the market. He knows what he's good at now, and his role in the team. I'm not saying he didn't know his role before, but he's shown he can put his foot in. He can put out fires, and he can get his foot on the ball. He's a real protector for the back four. That's vital at a club like Rangers because, especially in Scotland, you have a lot of the ball and are on the attack. But you can be vulnerable when it's turned over, and he does a brilliant job for the team. He's become a really big player for Rangers. Report by Christopher Jack. Evening Times Sport, April 22. Celtic dealt Juranovic blow. Report by James Kearney. Celtic defender Josip Juranovic is a major doubt for his team's final derby of the season, according to reports. The versatile Croatian arrived at Parkhead last summer and quickly established himself as an important figure in Ange Postecoglou's starting 11. The 26-year-old, who can play on either side in defence, was forced off during last weekend's 2-1 Scottish Cup semi-final defeat to Rangers after picking up a knock. According to Football Scotland, the fullback will not return to the first team until mid-May, making him a major doubt for the derby at the start of next month. The report adds that although Juranovic could miss most of the post-split fixtures, the defender could return in time for Celtic's clash with Motherwell on the final day of the season. Juranovic has made 35 appearances since arriving in Glasgow last summer and has provided 5 goals in that time. Report by James Kearney. Evening Times Sport, April 22. Former Celtic boss Lennon says old teammates stabbed him in the front. Report by James Kearney. Former Celtic manager Neil Lennon admits that he still feels upset that old teammates of his stabbed him in the front during the final days of his tenure at Parkhead. The Northern Irishman, now coaching in Cyprus, appeared on PLZ Soccer's football show and reminisced about his final campaign in charge of the Glasgow club. Celtic saw their bid for an historic 10th consecutive title derailed by Steven Gerrard's Rangers, and they finished their campaign trophyless, with Lennon being relieved of his duties in February of last year. Poor recruitment. the team's mid-season trip to Dubai, and the lack of fans in the stadium have all been offered up as excuses for the season going off the rails. Lennon admits it is hard to put his finger on one specific thing that he would do differently if he was given the chance, and revealed that he felt betrayed by former teammates who piled in with criticism when things were not going well. Lennon recalled, "I remember when the lockdown came. We were going to Ibrox 13 points clear. We had already won the League Cup. We were well ahead in the league, and we were in the Scottish Cup semi-finals. And then things got shut down for 3 months. We did not change our philosophy of training or our methods, but the atmosphere had obviously changed. Players who wanted to leave could not get away, and then we were under really strict protocols in how the players lived their lives, and they found it difficult. The players who came in found it difficult because it wasn't what they were expecting. We were all hoping that the lockdown would have ended and crowds would have been let back in around November or December, but obviously that wasn't the case. We never really got any momentum in the season at all. I'm not convinced Dubai is the reason things went wrong for us. Things were going wrong for us way before then. The recruitment was not great, but we felt that the players we were bringing in were good players, but just could not get to grips with what they were expected to do, and in totally unnatural circumstances. It's hard to put your finger on one specific thing and say, yes, I would definitely change that, because you don't go from being a treble-winning manager to being a total dud in the space of 3 months. It was painful. People turn on you very, very quickly. That's the fickle nature sometimes of football and football supporters. I didn't see it coming in the volume that it did come. Lennon was then asked if he was referring to Dermot Desmond, Celtic's majority shareholder, or Peter Lowell, the club's then chief executive, and he replied, "No, not at all. It was with some other people, ex-teammates, but certainly not with those two. I was very close to those two and still am. I'm far from happy. They were basically stabbing me, not in the back, but in the front." Lennon claimed to have confronted the former teammates in question, but refused to explicitly name them. And he added, "Draw your own conclusions. It's not rocket science." Report by James Kearney. Evening Times Sport, April 22. Lennon reveals Postecoglou inspiration. Report by James Kearney. Former Celtic manager Neil Lennon admits to feeling inspired by Ange Postecoglou, adding that the current Parkhead boss's career was the catalyst for the Northern Irishman's decision to coach overseas. Lennon was relieved of his duties as Celtic manager in February of last year, with the club's bid for 10 in a row in tatters, and spent some time away from the game before agreeing to take charge of Cypriot club Omonia Nicosia in March. The former Bolton and Hibs manager has been impressed with Postecoglou's work since the Greek-Australian was handed the reins at Parkhead, and revealed his admiration for the former Yokohama F. Marinos boss in an interview with PLZ Soccer's Football Show. Lennon is impressed with everything Postecoglou has achieved so far, and admitted that the well-travelled coach's career inspired him to move outside of his comfort zone. Lennon said of his successor, "He's been brilliant. He's been a breath of fresh air. His style of football is great to watch. The way he comes across in the media, he's pretty straightforward. I think he's genuinely a really good guy, and I've spoken to him on a lot of occasions. He has rebuilt the squad, which needed doing, everybody knew that, but some of the players he's brought in have been fantastic. He's on the cusp now of winning the title, which would be a remarkable achievement. I love the style of play. I think it's all front foot. They don't change their manner, who they're playing, and they try and win games early. And they can't win them early, then they just try and win the game in the best way that they can. I have taken a leaf out of his book. Ange has been in Australia, he's been in Japan, now he's been in Scotland. So I'm looking at thinking, why not go abroad and broaden your horizons and take on a different culture? Looking at what Ange has done over the last year and his body of work, that was the catalyst for me doing it. Report by James Kearney. Evening Times Sport, April 22. Graham Alexander reveals his frustrations over Rangers fixture. Graham Alexander was left frustrated by the time taken for Motherwell's cinched Premiership clash with Rangers to be brought forward a day. The Fir Park fixture was switched from Sunday to tomorrow to give the Ibrox men additional recovery time ahead of the first leg of their Europa League semi-final against RB Leipzig in Germany on April 28. Alexander believes it was a sensible decision, but would have liked it made quicker, as he and his squad had to prepare as if they were playing on both days, which was difficult. He added, "The delay in the decision is the thing that frustrates me and us at Motherwell. Our first communication was last Friday morning, and we understood all the options of Rangers, the league, the police, this, that and the other, and we said if it was for the benefit for everyone, we could go with it. But we wanted a decision so we could organise our training week differently, because obviously it was all geared up for a Sunday game. We didn't find out that it was going to be a Saturday game until late afternoon on Tuesday, which is not good, really, to be fair. We still trained, but to take that long, I know there are different factors, and we have to understand all the different issues around changing a fixture, but I don't think it should take 4 or 5 days to do that. So apart from that, I think it is the right thing to do. There are bigger problems to overcome, but I just felt we were left to the side. It was like it was all geared for other people apart from us. Motherwell made the top 6 with a dramatic 2-2 comeback draw at Livingston in their final pre-split game. The Steelmen are 6th on 40 points, behind Ross County on goal difference, and 1 point behind Dundee United. But Alexander is putting no pressure on his players in the 5 post-split games, despite European places being up for grabs. He said, "The players deserve massive credit for finishing in the top 6. Everyone knows what the potential of finishing 4th or 5th brings, but we haven't really spoken about that, because I don't think that there should be massive pressure on us to go and do that. It is there. It is an opportunity, and I know my players well enough that if there is an opportunity to do something, they will do their best to take it, but it won't dictate if our season has been a success or not. It already has been a success." Evening Times Sport, April 22. Van Bronckhorst issues Rangers challenge after roof injury blow. Report by Chris Jack. Giovanni Van Bronckhorst has challenged his Rangers squad to stand up and be counted after suffering another serious striking blow this term. The Ibrox boss will be without Kemar Roofe for the fixtures with Motherwell, RB Leipzig and Celtic due to a knee injury sustained during the Old Firm win last weekend. Midfielder Aaron Ramsey will also miss that key hat-trick of matches, while Alfredo Morelos and Philip Helanda have already been ruled out for the rest of the campaign. The loss of Roofe leaves Fashion Sakala as the only regular forward within the squad, as Rangers gear up for their Europa League semi-final and 2 must-win Premiership encounters. Van Bronckhorst knows his players must come to the fore if the champions are to keep their season on track and deliver silverware at home and abroad in the coming weeks. Van Bronckhorst said, after the semi-final against Celtic, where Aaron had to come off unfortunately with a hamstring problem, we have assessed him this week. Hopefully we will have him back around the Leipzig home game. We also had a problem with Kemar Roofe after the game, and the next day he felt his knee. For him it is the same. He will be out for some weeks, and also hopefully back for me to pick around the Leipzig home game. Of course, with Morelos already out, and now Kemar out for a couple of weeks, we have less options up front. As always, we just have to go on and make sure that we embrace the challenge. I think the atmosphere in the group is good, and we just have to make sure that we pick the best team for every game. We are very positive, although we have some injuries added to the list. I think all the players who are available are capable, and we know the task which is ahead of us. I think Sakala played well in that position in the last couple of games. We have limited options up front, but eventually other players have to stand up and will be given more time to play. That is why you have a big squad. For a moments like this, when players are not available, other players have to step up and show their quality as well. Report by Chris Jack. Evening Times Sport, April 22. Aaron Hickey subject of £18 million Brentford bid. Report by Ewan Payton. Former Hearts starlet Aaron Hickey is a transfer target for Brentford, according to a report. It's stated that the Premier League outfit are willing to pay Bologna £18 million for the Scotland cap. The 19-year-old's moved to the Serie A almost 2 years ago. His displays in either full-back position have caught the attention of various clubs across Europe. Now, according to the Daily Mail, Hickey is a subject of interest from the Bees. The report also states that an unnamed Italian club remain in contention to win his signature. Hickey has been linked with several clubs on UK soil recently, including Celtic, Aston Villa and Newcastle. Report by Ewan Payton. Evening Times Sport, April 25. Bitten's Celtic absence explained. Report by Aidan Smith. Ange Postecoglou has detailed why midfielder Nir Bitten has been absent for Celtic's last 3 games. The Israeli international featured against Rangers at Ibrox in the league on April 3, before then missing a Premiership match against St Johnstone, the Scottish Cup semi-final against Rangers, and Sunday's trip to Dingwall. Asked about Bitten's absence, Postecoglou was tight-lipped on the full extent of his injury, but he told the BBC, "He's got a bit of an issue, a slight issue." It remains to be seen whether Bitten will play a part in the remainder of this season as Celtic look to secure the Premiership title. The Hoops could all but wrap up the title next week as they welcome Rangers to Parkhead in the final derby clash of the season. Postecoglou hailed his players' laser focus after they took a major step closer to being crowned champions with a 2-0 victory over Ross County and Dingwall. He said, "Every game has been important to win. Have a look at our record from round 6. If people can show me the games where we could have afforded a slip-up, I'll be happy to have a look. We've been walking this tightrope for a very, very long time. I think people have not noticed because the players have dealt with it very well." Evening Times Sport, April 25. Jota and his Celtic future. Report by David Irvin. Celtic star Jota refused to discuss his future at Celtic, but insisted he's loving his time in Glasgow. The Portuguese winger, on loan from Benfica, has long been linked with making a permanent switch to Celtic in a £6 million deal. The 23-year-old is a fan favourite at Parkhead, and wild speculation over negotiations between Celtic and Benfica have continued throughout the season. But Jota and Celtic boss Ange Postecoglou are paying it no attention. Not a chance am I thinking about next season. I am just enjoying day by day, said Jota of the ongoing transfer speculation. It has been a terrific season for me, and I am just enjoying getting to know the people around me. I am trying to be a better person and a better player, and I am being with quality players every day. I don't want to talk about that. I just want to enjoy and give everything for this shirt. As a football player, you need to keep your mind on the pitch. That's all that matters. Bureaucratic things are for others. Please just let me enjoy my football. Jota's late strike in Dingwall was his 11th of the season, and he's offered 12 assists also in the successful loan period in Glasgow. But his experience at Celtic would only be amplified if his side were to go on to claim the title in the final 4 match days, starting against Rangers next week. And he added, "It's been a terrific fight against Rangers. These are the games we want to play. It will be another good fight for sure. Of course, when you are a Celtic player, you have to keep in mind the title, which we do game after game. This is a marathon, so we keep on doing our thing. There are some games to go, really important games, and now we need to rest before going strong to the other ones." Postecoglou was similarly coy when quizzed on whether a deal to bring Jota to Glasgow permanently. The Celtic boss, never one to give too much away, instead insisted his only thought was on a result in the Highlands, and more generally, a successful loan for Jota and Celtic. Asked if there was any update on a move for Jota, Postecoglou said, "If anyone thinks we're thinking of anything other than what happened today, for all of us the most important thing is that we work hard to get a successful year out of this loan deal. Whatever happens beyond that, these conversations, there are 2 parties, and if 2 parties want the same thing, then it will happen." He was good. With him, he had such a great start to the year, then he had a significant injury. He's another player who has just been really unfortunate this year, with a disrupted year. He's worked really hard to get back to the form we know he can. He was really good for the team and had a good all-round game. Just in that final third, he was looking threatening like we know he can be. It was great for him. Postecoglou also showered praise on fellow scorer Kyogo, who returned for his first start since December, and the Celtic boss insists his striker could have had a hat-trick if he were 100%. He continued, "He's a quality player, and he would be missed at any club. We've managed really well without him, but we know he's got special qualities. He's not 100% sharp yet. If he was, he would have probably had 2 or 3 today. Just getting that goal gives him the reward, and hopefully the motivation to keep going." Report by David Irvin. Evening Times Sport, April 25. Partick Thistle seal second pre-contract deal. Report by James Kearney. Partick Thistle have confirmed their second pre-contract signing ahead of the new season as Harry Millen signed a 2-year deal at Firhill. The 25-year-old left-back, formerly an Aberdeen youth player, has been at Cove Rangers since 2015 and has been a key part of the squad that has risen from the Highland League to the League One title. Millen is coming off the back of a successful season, with the attacking fullback having made 28 league appearances this term, scoring 6 goals and providing 7 assists. That form saw Millen nominated for the third tier's Player of the Year award, while the defender also won the club's own Player of the Year award and Players' Player of the Year. The left-back is the Jags' second pre-contract agreement after the Maryhill club announced last Friday that Falkirk striker Anton Dowds had also agreed a 2-year deal at Firhill. Report by James Kearney. Evening Times Sport, April 25. Postecoglou on Celtic tightrope challenge. Report by David Irwin. Ange Postecoglou insists his Celtic players are remaining laser-focused as they walk a title race tightrope. The Parkhead boss insisted his side are still taking things one game at a time after a crucial victory in Dingwall maintained their 6-point lead over Rangers with just 4 games left. A home match against Rangers is up next, with the chance to all but mathematically end the title race at Parkhead. But Postecoglou shut down any suggestion it is of more importance in the league title quest as he hailed his squad after their 28th match in the league without defeat. Said Postecoglou, "We have been walking this tightrope for a very, very long time. I think people have not noticed because the players have dealt with it very well. You look at our record and the challenges we have had throughout that time. The players have been laser-focused. Every game has been important to win. Have a look at our record from round 6. If people can show me the games where we could have afforded a slip-up, I'd be happy to have a look. Every game has been important. Every performance has been important. Today was no different. We just have to continue on with the football we have been playing with, whatever challenges we have, and I felt we did that today." On his players' achievements so far, he added, "I am not surprised, but very proud. It's one of those where sometimes I sit back and just think about what this group of men have achieved in such a short space of time. The beauty of it is that they'll be back in now and getting into recovery and getting ready to go again next week. They won't even be talking about anything else other than that we got the job done today." The Celtic boss then ruled out any need for a statement win after the narrow extra-time defeat to Rangers last week, as he discussed extreme reactions to the defeat from outside the club. He continued, "You talk about statements and all these things. We lost in extra time to a single goal in a cup semi-final. If that's evidence for things that need drastic change, or that we've gone off the rails, that was our first loss in I don't know however long. I get why people have extreme reactions to it, but I can tell you that by Tuesday, we were disappointed obviously because we were out of the cup and really wanted to get to the final. But we were back training at our levels and getting ready for the game today. There was never any need for me to address any sort of issues within. That's internally, but I get externally why it looks like that." Report by David Irwin. Evening Times Sport, April 25. Rangers close in on SWPL 1 title. Report by Alan Campbell. Rangers beat Aberdeen 4-0 in front of 4,412 fans at Ibrox to stay on course for a first ever SWPL 1 title. They remain 5 points clear of Glasgow City, who beat Hearts 2-0, with both sides now having just 3 games to play. Aberdeen kept Rangers at bay for the opening half hour, but goals from Sam Kerr and Kayla McCoy gave the home side a 2-goal advantage at half-time. A quick double early in the second half from Nicola Doherty and Lizzie Arnott hinted at the league leaders cutting loose, but there was no further scoring. Glasgow City did not find it easy against Hearts, but eventually took the lead 3 minutes from half-time. Poor defending from the home side allowed Hayley Lauder to slide the ball home from close range. A tremendous 30-yard effort from Priscilla Chinchilla 2 minutes later nearly doubled the lead, but Hearts goalkeeper Charlotte Parker-Smith did well to tip the ball over the bar. The cushion City needed did not arrive until 8 minutes from time, with Lauder this time the provider, and Peyton Perea smashing the ball into the net for her first goal since signing from North Carolina Courage in January. The win keeps City 11 points ahead of Celtic, who beat Hamilton Accies 6-0 at New Douglas Park, and ensures Champions League football next season for Aileen Gleeson's team. Striker and top scorer Charlie Wellings got a hat-trick for Celtic. Hibs, who were knocked out of the Scottish Cup by Partick Thistle at the start of the month, returned to Petershill Park and beat the home side 2-0. Spartans stay in 6th, despite losing 1-0 at home to a Motherwell side, which had taken just 1 point from 24 in their previous 8 games. Report by Alan Campbell. Evening Times Sport, April 25. Rangers announce Player of the Year winners. Report by Aidan Smith. Alfredo Morelos was last night named as Rangers Player of the Season. The Colombian striker has netted 19 goals in all competitions and has ultimately improved his overall striker play this campaign to help his side into the Final Four of the Europa League. James Tavernier was voted the Players' Player of the Year, while Calvin Bassey picked up the Young Player of the Year award. The goal of the campaign went to midfield man John Lundstrom for his stunning strike against Borussia Dortmund in Europe. Nicola Doherty landed the Women's Player of the Year award, and Jane Ross received the Players' Player. After returning from injury to become a mainstay in the Rangers midfield, Ryan Jack landed special recognition with the John Gregg Achievement Award. Elsewhere, Morelos, the Top Scorer Award, Charlie McCann, Academy Player of the Year, and Cole McKinnon, the B-Team Players' Player gong he received. Report by Aidan Smith.
And that was this week's Glasgow Times Sport podcast, normally recorded in our studio at the Bishopbriggs Media Centre, currently recorded from our volunteers' homes with the publisher's kind permission. Thanks for listening.